Everyone. Welcome to annual church meeting. We're very excited to have this hybrid voting experience once again, and so excited to have so many new members with us. Our quorum today is 23 people. So if you are a 21 people. If you are a member, please raise your hand so you may be counted. Therese, do you mind counting? And online we have folks as well. Thank you.
26. There are 6 online. So 26.
Beautiful. Awesome. Quorum achieved. Yeah. All right. We've got we passed and we have people to spare, and they will return to us, I'm sure. Before we begin, I want to invite our Reverend Otto O'Connor up to give us a welcome and blessing.
So it is always a joy to do this holy work and sacred work of determining where our money goes and what we are going to do in terms of living our values as a church. And so I'd love to open our meeting with this blessing by Hope Johnson, and it's called Keep Your Dreams Alive. Listen, light the way, lend a hand, make decisions, commit, take risks, fail forward, build community, nurture meaningful relationships, be real, give thanks, invest in someone or something you believe in, live, love, dream big, be transformed, change the world, lead, and keep your dreams alive. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Otto. So a little bit of housekeeping real quick. As we did last year, we will be conducting voting using menti.com. I believe, Luca, do we have a slide for Menti? If not, that's okay. What's that? Beautiful. And speaking of our terrific tech lead and really all things back of the house, Eric Fearing is running the Menti from the back. If you have trouble logging into Menti, and you can see how to do that up here, you can work with Eric in the back and we can get you set up. We will go slow enough to make sure that if anyone is having a tech issue, that we record your vote one way or another. So you can go to menti.com, that's MENTI.com. And the code for our meeting today is 62777075. If that's your scratch ticket, that's your lucky number. So we'll give folks a minute to get in there. And I also want to say, we formally, quote unquote, will run this meeting using Robert's rules, but only to the extent that it is helpful for facilitating conversation. We know that these rules and any kind of parliamentary procedure sometimes has the effect of silencing people or making conversation harder. That's not what we're trying to do. So I will, as your moderator, make judgment calls to help the conversation keep going. It's been pretty easy in the past. We haven't ever had a further amendment to the amendment to withdraw the previous motion. So, barring that exciting opportunity for me to really break out the book, I think we'll be okay. Has everyone been able to get onto menti.com? Are people having trouble? People are good? People are good? All right, the first order of business for us to vote on is the approval of our minutes from our last meeting, May 16th, 2021. Those were sent out to everyone. We would need a motion if someone wants to move. I have a hand up. Yes, $100.
Sure.
All right, a motion to accept the minutes as distributed. And I should note, and I failed to do this before, maybe we'll have the mic when we do further motions. Do I have a second? Okay, we have a second. So we can now vote on menti.com, and I should vote on menti.com as well. So we'll give it a minute for everyone to cast their votes. The motion is whether or not to accept the minutes of May 16, 2021 as distributed. And we'll give it a minute just to for everyone to get going. Luca, can you pull the numbers up again? Oh, I'm sorry. Eric, could you pull the numbers up? Beautiful. Yes, great idea. 62777075. 62777075. Right now, we're just signing in. I jumped ahead. Beautiful. All right, we'll give it one more moment. Got 22. We have 22 people signed in so far. Does anyone need help signing in? You can raise your hands. Okay, that's fine. We have made plans for that. Eric will work with you to make sure your vote is counted. There will be ways to vote even if you are not logging in on your phone. So here's the, and we will wait until everyone has a chance to vote before we close this question. But the question is, shall we approve the minutes of the prior meeting? So you can now vote yes or no. If you have on your screen, it says the presenter has changed slides. You can hit go to slide and it will take you to that vote. We will give everyone a moment. And please let us know if you're having challenges. This is the time to do that.
Hey, Alex, do we know the Menti code?
Yes, we do know the Menti code. The Menti code is 62777075.
Thank you.
62777075. We have 24 votes in, or is that 24 people attending? I'm not sure. 24 votes. Has everyone voted who wishes to do so? Excellent, great. Let's see how we did. Okay, 100% voted yes. Those minutes are approved. Controversial. Moving on, we have a bylaws presentation, discussion, and vote. I believe that is, where did Eric go?
Eric, he's doing everything, including helping with tech.
Yes.
Oh, there he is. You all set? Everybody give Eric some kudos.
Yeah, let's hear a round of applause for Eric.
Kudos to Eric, thank you.
So we'll have a presentation on the bylaws from Eric, some proposed changes that were circulated.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience. It's a whole thing. So there are 6 bylaw amendments, and they're all pretty small. Some of them make big changes, well, at least sound like big changes that we've sort of already implemented. The first amendment just distinguishes between the fiscal year and the church year in a couple of places where it was unclear whether people were supposed to take office in September or July 1st. The second one reduces the number of members required to dismiss a minister to the amount currently recommended by the UUA. As you can imagine, a simple majority of the members wanting to dismiss the minister would probably be reason to do so. And requiring 2/3 is sort of silly. The third one is probably the most substantive, and the reason we're doing this early in the meeting, which removes the financial secretary as a church officer. So the financial secretary position is about like collecting pledges and accounting for income to the congregation. And now that we have a congregational administrator on the paid staff who's doing pretty much all of that work, there's no reason to elect a volunteer member to duplicate effort. So we would remove that and not elect a financial secretary. Big thanks to Stacy Gilchrist, who has been our financial secretary once or twice now as sort of caretaker of that position. Amendment 4 allows the president to appoint a substitute moderator in the event that the moderator is not present at this meeting. We had this sort of come up last year because the current bylaws say the president has to run the meeting. And since the president of the board is one of the people who's going to be giving the recommendations and generally having opinions on all of the business, it's not sensible to make that person the one who's not allowed to hold opinions and speak to business. So we would rather have a substitute appointed than make the parish president do it. Amendment 5 allows the minister to nominate a smaller slate to the minister's advisory council if the board agrees. Finding volunteers to serve on the minister's advisory council is a significant challenge as long as we're not getting the current process requires twice as many people to have agreed to serve and then let the board pick half of them on behalf of the minister, which is needless bureaucracy and power hoarding by previous board rule writers. And the last amendment allows the board to move annual meeting 2 weeks earlier or later if needed to make sure everybody can be here. Having a specific date when you're gonna like have everybody out gardening and then have to come in back together is like maybe not ideal. So if we gave notice in early April, we'd like to be able to move the date of annual meeting by a couple of weeks instead of always is this the third Sunday in April, in May rather. Are there questions? If
Hello,
anybody,
Jamie Gorton, member. What, if any, policies are going to be put in place to make sure that the revenue being handled by the administrator doesn't really ever cross streams in a dangerous or unacceptable way with the treasurer, who under the old system would have been dealing only with expenditures and not dealing with income?
Yeah, so the treasurer, so I'm currently the treasurer and handle income only between like the plate and the back office on Sunday mornings, and things are already working that way. Andrea does all of the record keeping around income. Is there a specific issue you would be concerned about? The way it functions now is that Andrea is taking care of logging income, whether it's plate pledge or space use and so on. Most of the income that the church operates on is from the endowment, which is already in the name of the treasurer. Good, great. Any other, yeah, please, Brett.
Just a clarification question on the advisory council. What do the bylaws currently require prior to the changes?
So Minister's Advisory Council currently says when vacancies occur, the minister will submit twice as many names as vacancies to the board, who shall select the new members from that slate. We're just adding language that says with the consent of the board, fewer names may be submitted, because if people are willing to serve and Otto wants them appointed, the board could say, find us a couple more options. We don't like that particular full set, but we don't need to find twice as many people as vacancies. You bet. The exact text of this stuff is on the parish website. If you go to fpmalden.org and scroll down the front page, you'll get to an annual meeting link that has a color marked up copy of this stuff. Online question? Martha, I think you can stop screen sharing for now, and that will make things easier for seeing online folks. Abby?
Yeah. I can, just for newer members, what does the Ministers Advisory Council do? Can we just get a really brief summary?
Hey, Otto, want to talk about your advisory council?
I'll just stand over here so people can see me. So this is just a council that serves as my support and the council that I come to. It's called in newer churches or in newer language is called the ministerial. My brain is now. I have COVID brain. So it's like the ministerial kind of like group of people who are there when there's a major thing that happens in my life, right? If I need some kind of HR related support, they are there to help problem solve and talk through different things that happen in the church. They are specifically not folks on the board, so that if I ever have a dispute with the board, the Ministers Advisory Council are there to help sort of manage that. So they are a group of folks that I basically, Committee on Ministry, that's what it's called now. So they basically talk through all of those different issues of the church. Does that answer your question, Abby?
I think I saw a thumbs up on video.
You can thumbs up or down, Abby. I can see you. Okay, great.
Yeah, couldn't see you for a second. Great. And if there aren't more questions, back to Alex.
So the question now is, shall we adopt the amendments to the church bylaws? And you can vote on Menti, and we'll give it a few moments. And again, if you're having trouble, you can raise your hand. Or if you have a question, you can raise your hand.
Point of order, Alex, do we need to do a motion to approve?
I suppose we do need a motion to approve.
Briefly, I motion to approve.
We have a motion and we have a second. We can proceed to the question. Thank you. So we have 20 votes so far. I realize I need to vote. Has everyone who wishes to vote been able to do so? All right, looks like yes. So the motion passes unanimously. We have adopted the amendments to the church bylaws as presented. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Eric, really, for taking that on. Next, we have the slate of officers. Therese, you know who's going to be presenting this slate of officers?
No, nomination committee is, I want to be decided, Brian?
Presenting the slate of officers.
Could be Cody or Caitlin as well.
Yes,
I
nominating.
can.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cody.
Let me try to remember it. So we have several positions up for re-election this year. I'm going to the annual meeting website right now. And the financial secretary is no longer one of them. So I will start with nominating committee, because Brian Boswell is terming off of nominating committee. So Holly Wenninger for that position. Moderator, Alex Pratt, your host for today. Clerk, Beth Zarega for reelection, treasurer Eric Fearing for reelection, and the board members, myself as a second term on the board, and a new board member as David Zarega.
So those are the nominations. Do we have a motion? I see a motion from Jamie Gordon. Or is that a question?
I would move that we elect the officers as a slate.
Okay.
Jamie Gorton moves that we elect the officers as a slate for those online who may not have been able to hear it without a microphone.
Thank you,
Aisha
Aisha.
Cruz seconds.
All right. Do we have any discussion?
We have discussion.
I just want to clarify for our new members that we have always voted as a slate. We don't vote on individual people, on individual positions. We could debate this in the future about changing that, but that is how we've currently always done it. So just an FYI.
Thank you for that. And if you know, a simple majority of people here moved and seconded that we should take them one at a time, we could do that, but that's typically not what has happened. Seeing no other questions, points of inquiry, etc., we have a motion and we have a second, so we can move the question. Shall we elect a slate of nominated officers? It's election day in this very short span of time. It's my favorite time. Second favorite time, only to fiscal New Year's Eve. All right, I'll give another moment for everyone to vote. Has everyone voted who wishes to do so? We're going to give it one more moment. Isn't this fun? I'm excited to see who wins. What's that? Good to go? All right, thank you for voting. And it looks like our slate of officers has been elected. So the motion passes. Thank you, nominating committee, and thank you, all of our members. Next on the agenda, we have the ministerial letter of agreement presentation. We're going to hand it over to our president, Therese Perkins.
Hello, everyone. Our minister signs a letter of agreement when they're hired, which is their contract, basically. And we have, as a board and a congregation, to decide about making some updates and changes to the letter of agreement. Changes with direct budgetary impact or related to dismissal of a minister require all of us to vote to amend the minister's contract. So that's what we'll be doing today. The three changes that we're proposing today are all from the Unitarian Universalist Association recommended letter of agreement and are also recommended by the board to be included in Otto's letter of agreement. The remainder of this agreement was already adopted by the board earlier in the church year, and all these changes have been held over for today so that we can get a full congregation vote on those. The associated budgetary requirements is reflected in the recommended budget, which we will hear after this presentation. So the changes that we're looking to make to the letter of agreement are as follows. Professional and out-of-pocket expenses. The congregation will provide the greater of 10% of salary and housing, or $8,000 for professional development, for professional expenses through an account expense reimbursement. So the changes are, we'll be providing greater of 10% of housing and salary or $8,000 for professional expenses. If you'd like to see the original, I'm sorry, I don't have it printed out in front of me, but it is on the website under that link that Eric talked about, fpmalden.org. If you go to the annual meeting at the bottom, you can see it. There's also some paper packets If anyone needs a paper packet, Eric is holding it up right now. You can look at it here in person. The second change that we propose voting on today is negotiated resignation. The board may negotiate the minister's resignation in exchange for a general release of all claims signed by the minister. The congregation will pay the financial equivalent of the minister's unused vacation and continue the minister's salary, housing, and the congregation's contribution toward the minister's insurance benefits for an additional 1 month per year of service up to 10, which is a period defined as administrative leave or until the minister has begun service in another comparable position if sooner. The continuation of benefits is subject to the provisions of the various benefit plans. And the third change that we're proposing today is in the dismissal with reason clause. The minister may be dismissed by the board with less than 90 days notice and without the severance payments described in this agreement if the minister is convicted of a felony, and this is the change, unless arising from civil disobedience. So those are our 3 proposed changes, and we welcome any conversation. Yes, Brett.
My question is, how do we determine as a congregation if a felony is the result of civil disobedience, I guess?
Through conversation, I suppose. That's a great question. It makes sense. Does anyone have a more thoughtful answer than mine? I assume that as a congregation, we would meet to discuss such a thing and take a vote. Sarah Boswell.
I believe that the wording here is that the board would dismiss with less than 90 days notice for that reason. So I think it would be a conversation of the board, and board meetings are always open to the entire congregation.
Thank you, Sarah.
I do want to, hello, Otto. Otto also has opinions.
It is the best practice of ministers to alert their congregational boards if they are planning on being involved in civil disobedience. That's not in the letter, but that would be my practice if that were to happen. So it would most likely not be a surprise.
And I saw Rachel Woodring had her hand up.
I would imagine if there was some extenuating circumstance such as loss of life, even if it was during civil disobedience, that might be the clause might be revisited, correct?
I'm sorry, Rachel, could you speak a little closer to the mic?
Sorry. I would assume if there's some sort of extenuating circumstance, even if it was a felony was committed during civil disobedience, such as an accidental loss of life, that would be a different circumstance.
I'm happy to put in my 2 cents as someone who has strong opinions about this and also works adjacent to the legal field. Jamie, you're the lawyer. If I say anything, I shouldn't just wave wildly. Generally, I think that this circumstance exists specifically to address the fact that ministers are often civil rights activists, and especially in this faith. There are obviously circumstances where if like having a minister charged with a felony is a big deal. 1, it doesn't happen that often. 2, it is really important that we be able to dismiss a minister who has committed a felony that is truly and deeply out of line with our values and we think poses concern or danger to the congregation. I can't foresee any of that happening with Otto here. And obviously for certain things that happen during civil disobedience, if a protest turned into a riot, and the minister and several other perhaps members of our congregation were charged with manslaughter, that would be a really big deal. This would not just be like something we have to discuss about dismissing the minister. It would be like a much, much larger conversation. So this provision specifically, I think, is to deal with issues like, have you been charged with, we make wild things into felonies in this country, as I am sure Jamie can tell you if you're interested to hear later. But this would be to deal with things like, I think you can have a felony charge for things like blocking a highway, that kind of thing. So those would be the situations that we're looking for here. Things that are like significantly more serious, not only would we probably have board involvement, we'd probably also have involvement from the UUA or the region. And Otto has raised his hand again.
Sorry. It also doesn't say you can't fire me. It just says you can't fire me without the period of notice. So just for the record.
That's right. This is amendment to the period of notice required.
I guess devil's advocate here that regardless of whether we think this is likely with Otto, this would be the letter of agreement that would exist for any minister, or would we be able to change it again? I guess that's a question of, do we want to add language that says unless arising from disobedience, like civil disobedience that we were made aware of? Like, we can add language to help clarify that, or at the discretion of the board, or I'm not good with the word part. Jamie nominated for you on that, but I would suggest we could add language to that line.
Tony has thoughts.
I note that the board does not have to dismiss the minister, and that if the board fails to act, we can have a congregational meeting to dismiss the minister without paying any attention to these rules.
An excellent point.
Before we go to Jamie, I realize we haven't been paying much attention to the folks online. Is there anyone online with a question? Okay, thank you, Luca. Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
So back to the probabilities issue, trespass, reckless endangerment, what's the other one I'm missing? All of the great civil disobedience crimes are not felonies anyway. It's like you would have to get into the realm of manslaughter or particularly targeted statutes, which I can't really talk about. But the last time that I remember that this contract language came up, I was on the board at the time, and my opinion was that we didn't even need to add that because it's so unnecessary. Clarity is always good, so I think that we should add it, but I wouldn't personally, as a criminal defense attorney, lose any sleep over it.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'll just add that I noticed later in the clause, there's another clause that says, if the minister is determined by the board to have seriously neglected ministerial responsibility under the agreement or to have engaged in activities egregiously violate the UUMA guidelines. So that makes me feel like there are other grounds to remove a minister aside from, a felony. And that makes me feel comfortable that there are, other clauses in place.
Thank you, Brett. I'm going to put in a plug too. If you do have further concerns, do read the entirety of the clause. It is very thorough, and we are really just voting on whether to approve the suspension of the 90-day notice and for the provision of civil disobedience. And that's the crux of it. There are other clauses that more specifically address dismissal of a minister by the board or the congregation for various reasons.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Can people hear me? Any questions online? Okay, seeing none. And Aisha, if we could get the mic ready to raise your hand if you have a motion to make relative to these proposed changes to the letter of agreement. Looking for a motion.
I'm Sarah McDonald. I motion that we approve the recommended amendments to the letter of agreement.
We have a motion. Aisha, I think we have a second over there.
I second.
Thank you to our
Excellent.
seconds.
Motion and a second. Seeing no further questions, we can move the question and you can vote on Menti. And Martha, when everyone's voted, can you give me a thumbs up? Thank you. And everyone includes myself. Has everyone voted who wishes to do so? Martha, any votes outstanding? All right. The motion is adopted unanimously, as are the amendments to the letter of agreement. Thank you. Next, we have my favorite part of any meeting, the budget. So coming up will be, you've heard from him before, you'll hear from him again. Eric Fearing.
I just adore a business meeting. Okay, so everybody should open the budget packet. We have a handful of printouts. It's online at fbmalden.org. Please do take a look. It's pretty long. I don't want to read the whole thing. But I will give some of the highlights from the original description here. Some of the major choices made by the board and the budget team this time were significant increases in permanent staff compensation. We gave either a 7 or 8% raise, depending on which of the 5 staff members we're talking about. We recognize that the cost of living is increasing dramatically, and to have purchasing power parity requires at least a 5 or 6% raise. And then moving people up based on the industry they're working in and seniority within the congregation, sort of differentiated between the 7% and the 8% in this recommendation. It sounds big because it's meaningful, and it's going to mean that it's actually a raise for people. And it's very important, as we are a small but growing but very privileged with a high endowment sort of congregation. We can afford to pay for excellent staff who match our values and do what we need them to do. And we don't want to end up competing with slightly larger congregations on salary and lose staff to that. We are also making some decisions around maintaining the church building. Currently, we put in, I believe, $60,000 for capital improvements, which is a sort of typical project size for us. We are in desperate need of a new roof. The roof on the building is original. A slate roof is supposed to last 100 years. It's been well over that, and you can tell. There have been leaks. We spend a lot of money maintaining and replacing slates all the time. As we go into next church year, we want to think about whether we want to make an amendment specifically to replace the roof on the building and what sort of repayment timeline makes sense to have that as part of our building conversation. So exactly what the money in the building capital expense line is going to is up in the air right now, because we might need multiple times as much money if we're really doing the roof project. Also, there are some changes in that area around the community garden outside. We want to make this place more visible and reflective of the vibrancy of what we're doing here and what we want to be doing here. We have been giving a gift or grant program for various Malden neighbors over the last couple of years of the pandemic. We're maintaining $10,000 in that. It's now been broken out to a separate line under social justice. We had previously been doing $24,000, $2,000 a month over the course of the year. We've reduced that slightly as the pandemic is coming to a close, and we want to have a stronger conversation about gifting, and if that's needed in the long term. And then another $10,000 to a reparations line item to be discussed where that money is going as we move into next church year. But we are on Indigenous land. We have an endowment that was largely built on money from slaveholders in Malden. So there are things we can do, and putting our money toward organizations seeking justice should be one of our priorities. Also, we had a big drop in the emergency line because we've also institutionalized our tech hosts to be in the proper salary section. Then changes for technology. We've basically got all of the hardware we need to do a pretty fancy hybrid meeting with a bunch of people or a lot of people and to run worship. So we've taken back some options there. Going through the lines, income on 4010, the Eastern Bank portfolio income. We make a lot of money off of bond interest payments that hasn't been properly accounted for as income rather than unreinvested value. We're just putting that into the budget here because it's a clearer way to change it. So that looks like a big change, but it's in fact just a difference in record keeping. Ministerial services, yes. Otto has a sabbatical coming due to him next year, and we will need a different minister for several months. There are some major increases in various ministerial services lines, and then some for guest ministers. Any questions about that stuff? We'll go back and do open questions at the end as well. Into building expenses, I talked already about capital expense. 60,000 is sort of a placeholder. That's the kind of thing that would refurnish the bell tower room for us and do some improvements we've been looking for, but that may not be where we end up. We'll come back to the congregation for more money if it becomes a roof year. Lawn care has a gargantuan increase because we want to treat that as a house in like an outdoor grounds line item, including the community garden. Dropping down a ways to program expenses, leadership development 6098 doubled to support travel to the UU Association of Music Ministries Conference and General Assembly. We'd like to be able to make it possible to send our delegates and some people to conferences similar to that and support those who have a need of a financial need to make that happen. There are a few line items that increase because of the UU summer camp program that Martha's been talking about among our RE announcements. And then the last thing I had highlighted was the social justice section, taking what was a $25,000 committee budget and more clearly separating it out into emergency gifts, social justice committee discretion, and reparations donations. And I am eager for questions or comments on decisions that have been suggested. Big thanks to everybody who was on the budget team and the whole board for getting us to where we are here. Thank goodness.
Question, but a suggestion, actually. I think I spoke to you earlier outside about it. If you're getting lowballed by the insurance company about the roof leaking by the stairs here, you should get a public adjuster, and he'll work with you because you hired him. They only charge like 10% of whatever it costs is to fix the roof. And they'll get more money from the insurance company to fix it. Also, if you're gonna do the whole roof, I would suggest after you do it to get solar to get it'll cut down your electricity bills. Big time.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. The board talked quite a bit about the roof project and have thought about how much it would mean to environmental impact if we could put solar panels up and become a generation site. We haven't looked at the financials behind that, but we certainly will if we go that route with the roof. And if there aren't more questions or comments, can I move we adopt the budget?
Sure.
So moved.
We have a motion from Eric Fearing to adopt the proposed budget effective July 1, 2022. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments, questions, discussion, debate? All right, we have another second.
Just a clarification question. Did we say that money for the roof is not in this budget, but would be approved at a later date if we determine?
Eric is
that was
nodding
needed?
yes.
So is that a 2022 thing or is that a 2023 thing?
Yes, that is what I said. We've I think gotten one estimate so far on the roof, and it was on the scale of $300 and something thousand. So we need a couple other bids to compare. It could very well be a 2022-3, like next fiscal year thing, but it would be a significant change to the budget. So we would perhaps propose it at the September congregational meeting or call a special meeting to specifically fund that project once we've decided and talked it around.
Thank you, Eric. A special church meeting to talk about a budget change. Don't threaten me with a good time. We have another question or comment on the budget. Can you hold for the mic? Just so folks can hear you inside.
I just want to advise that you should hire a roofing company rather than a construction company to do this, because they know what they're doing. They didn't where I live, and there were problems.
Fair enough. Noted.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, debates? Hotly contested budget debate that we're having today. See, any questions, comments online? No. All right, seeing none and having a motion in 2 seconds, we shall move to the question, shall we adopt the proposed budget effective July 1, 2022? Some of you have already voted. I am not among you. No, I am. Was I the last to vote? Are we good to go, Martha? Oh, Eric's checking. I'm on the edge of my seat here. I know. That's how excited I am. All right, our votes are in and our budget is adopted unanimously for fiscal year 2023, effective July 1, 2022. Congratulations to the team that worked on that. Not an easy task. Next on our agenda is new business. Do we have any new business? I don't believe that we do. So Therese Perkins, all right.
Hi, everybody. This is Therese. This isn't exactly new business, but I hope you don't mind me grabbing a minute to thank you all for the honor of serving on your board. I'm coming off the board. It has been my joy and also struggle, and it has been a calling to serve the church for you all as a board member, as president of the board. So I just want to thank you and recommend it highly to everyone. It's to be a steward of this place is something that means a lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Therese. Seeing no other new business, the question before us is, shall we close debate? Shall we adjourn? Or what's that? We're done with Menti. All right. So we can have let's do a voice motion. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Oh, Cody has a question.
Hi. Sorry, I was trying to remember what I said I would bring up at the annual meeting. It's not really new business again. It's sort of announcement-y, but we are always looking for people to worship associate, usher, coffee hour. Now that stuff is happening in person again. So if there is interest in that, especially from new members, yes, Therese is pointing at something, or you can email the board. Therese, do you have more to add to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Yes, please volunteer. All right, and we have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion? Someone moved. Murphy moved. Murphy moved the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I hear a second. All right. Motion made and second that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. Don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that it happened. Thank you, everybody.
If you haven't got a t-shirt yet, we're gonna have one.